Breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Jimmy Garoppolo is staying in San Francisco after months of trade speculation. CBS Sports senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones reporting that Jimmy G and the 49ers have agreed to a restructured one-year contract that will keep him in San Francisco this season. Trey Lance, though, will still go into the season as QB1. And let's welcome in CBS Sports senior NFL insider Jonathan Jones. Jonathan, what more can you tell us about the San Francisco 49ers decision to hold on to Jimmy G?
It's unique, isn't it, Hakeem? Because really the whole NFL was waiting for the 4 p.m. Eastern deadline tomorrow for the 49ers to make a decision on Jimmy Garoppolo. We in the NFL community understood that the Niners were not going to carry Jimmy Garoppolo into the season at a cap hit of nearly $27 million. His salary for the 2022 NFL season was going to guarantee after the deadline, if he was essentially on the roster of 53 men, that his salary would guarantee. The Niners had about $2 million in cap space, if that, going into this. And so it was very clear and obvious that that was not going to take place. So a trade was not going to happen because no team was going to take on Jimmy Garoppolo and his rehabbing throwing shoulder at that number. And so the thought was that he would get cut. But instead, he and the San Francisco 49ers have been working on this deal that keeps him there as a backup. It gets him paid nicely, probably more, certainly with incentives than he would have gotten if he were a free agent and signed with, let's say, the Seattle Seahawks, for example. And everyone understands and knows that this is Trey Lance's team starting out in the season. I don't think that there's anyone in San Francisco who would sit here and tell you, oh, it is definitely Trey Lance's team from week 1 all the way through week 18 and beyond. And so having Jimmy Garoppolo there gives the San Francisco 49ers some flexibility, some comfort, some insurance. But no question about it, in September, this is Trey Lance's team.
Yeah, isn't this insurance basically to keep him on the roster? Because what if Trey Lance struggles out of the gate?
Well, that's one way to look at it, and it very well could have been. But, I mean, you know, if the Seahawks or the Houston Texans or the Cleveland Browns had wanted to execute a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo would probably be with one of those teams right now and be paid and have his salary guaranteed. And so they sort of got to this fork in the road and decided, well, we don't want to release you because there's nothing more valuable in the NFL than a quarterback who can get your team to the conference title game and to the Super Bowl. That's who Jimmy Garoppolo is, with a strong supporting cast around him, no question, with a fantastic offensive mind calling the plays in Kyle Shanahan. But where they found themselves right now was, frankly, a second-year quarterback who didn't get that many reps last season, certainly not with the ones, who didn't get that many games in college, and the games he did play were at a lower level in Trey Lance and North Dakota State. So what you do get now is insurance with a guy who all he does is win, Jimmy Garoppolo. And if he's healthy, he can always provide you with being the best backup in the entire NFL.
Yeah, the restructured deal, no matter what here, it's still the final year of his deal with his contract there in San Francisco. As you mentioned, all he's done as a starter is win 37-16. How do you expect San Francisco to handle him during the season and perhaps use him as trade bait as we see the weeks go on and perhaps a guy goes down?
Yes, so he has not been practicing with the team because we talked about how his salary was not guaranteed. Well, it would have been guaranteed if he got injured out on the practice field, if somebody stepped on his foot, if he slipped on a banana peel out on the practice field with the team practicing, that salary would guarantee. So the team has kept him away from team-related activities on the field ever since he passed his physical at the start of training camp. So I would imagine that starting tomorrow, the Niners have practice tomorrow or at some point this week, he's going to rejoin the team and be the number 2 quarterback there behind Trey Lance as far as being trade bait. As part of this deal, he has a no-trade clause. That does not mean that he can't be traded. That just means that he has control over where he would ultimately be traded to, that he would be able to veto any possible trade destination. This contract makes him a far more palatable option at quarterback if he proves he's healthy for a team who, let's say it's week 5, let's say it's week 7, and they didn't have the $25+ million in cap space, but they do have 7 to 10 or 12, and that they can trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, he finds a place that he ultimately would like to go, and that they could then work out via trade, getting him to that destination, then ultimately potentially a long-term deal there. So if you're the Niners, it works for you because you do get cap relief. You still have the trade chip in a valuable quarterback, and you have insurance at backup quarterback with a Trey Lance who has struggled this preseason, along with an offensive line that's also struggled this preseason. And if you're Jimmy Garoppolo, you're not out there wandering the streets, the NFL streets, of course, hoping that you ultimately land somewhere for less money. He is getting paid more money in this contract than he would have gotten if he signed with another NFL team this week.
What's more likely? Jimmy Garoppolo becomes the starter in San Francisco, takes over once again, and because of maybe perhaps struggles that we see with Trey Lance, or is it more likely that he gets traded by week 9 or 10?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously the Niners don't want to lose Jimmy Garoppolo for nothing, and so they would love to ultimately trade Jimmy Garoppolo. They have invested a great deal in Trey Lance when you consider what they did to trade up to get that number 3 overall pick and draft Trey Lance back in the 2021 draft. So you have to imagine that this will be Trey Lance's team moving forward, just simply based off the investment that they've made in Trey. And so when you look at Jimmy, yeah, I guess it is more likely that he is ultimately traded later this season, but it takes 2 to tango. You're going to have to find a team that, number one, most importantly, Jimmy Garoppolo wants to go to because he has the no trade clause. And then number 2, you have to have a team that has a need that is created. Right now, there isn't a team that actually needs Jimmy Garoppolo. But at that price point, in the middle of the season, before the trade deadline, a team wants to try their hand at getting him in their building. That absolutely can happen.
Trade deadline November 1st, but we're looking forward to our first week in the NFL, 10 days away from the season opener. And we're getting some news here at Jimmy Garoppolo as they restructure his contract. Jonathan Jones with the latest from San Francisco. Jonathan, thank you. So, Jimmy Garoppolo not going anywhere, at least not for the foreseeable future. They restructure his deal, a 1-year contract, still the final year of his contract. But still, Trey Lance will be the week 1 starter when they head to Chicago. Look, again, the trade deadline is November 1st, right? So that's right after week 8. So you have 8 weeks right here to figure out what you're going to do. Is Jimmy G going to start at some time in those first 8 weeks, or does he get traded by the bye week in week 9? We shall see. But again, week 1, Trey Lance going against Justin Fields in Chicago.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.